at Waterworks Literacy, when we presented Lingua Cafe, this place was overflowing. And there was not enough space, and so we had people sitting on the steps here and all over. But anyway, Lingua Cafe, I'll just take you through what Lingua Cafe is all about and how it started. And then we'll do a mini Lingua Cafe as to how we do it in our school. I'm sure all of you have these chats or chats over chai. Yes?
Sure.
And then across the table you're discussing the books that you read. Textbooks, sometimes fiction, sometimes non-fiction, extra extended reading. And so that's how it started. Ms. Toshiko and I, last year we were in a coffee shop and we were discussing books and choosing books for the IB kids. And we were talking about words in translation. And there was one particular book we started talking about, a book that was written in Arabic by an Egyptian author. And later when we came back to school, we had a chat with our head of Arabic. And he had read the same book in Arabic while we had read it in English. And when we shared notes, there's so many things that were different. And so we said, wow, this is good. And so we took it to our children. And when we discussed the book with our children, a lot more opened up. And so we thought we should have something like an informal setting where we could gather together and just talk about books. And that's what Lingua Cafe is all about. And so today, quickly, we're going to, I just did the explanation anyway. We're going to give you an experience of Lingua Cafe, and then we're going to let you explore it in your own schools. So what is Lingua Cafe? It's built on the cafe culture in the UAE. UAE, Dubai especially, is a melting pot of culture, and so what other place to have Lingua Cafe, and why? For students to get together in an informal and friendly setting to discuss works of literature, to provide students an opportunity to critically analyze the work with native speakers, and to facilitate inclusion and integration of work lost in translation. And that's what we found very interesting, especially the third one. And then to share cultural interests. We've had a few authors visit our school, and so we could discuss these books with them. Any time that would be preferable, about 60 to 90 minutes during your school hours or after school hours, and the time will depend upon who you want to have in your Lingua Cafe. Sometimes we invite parents as well, so then we have it after school hours so we can have parents. So your type of people to be presented. And let me quickly take you through, I'll show you some pictures of the Lingua Cafes we've had. We've had 3 so far. One was based on the book, the Arabic book, and so we had a setting the Arabic way. We had a majlis, and there was kawa and dates, and this is how the setting was. We had it in the evening, so we had students, we had parents, we had teachers contributing. Our second one was on Albert Camus' The Stranger, book in French. And so we started with a mini to give that French touch to it. And our third one was Rhyme, Rhythm and Rhapsody. And we opened it this time to even our service staff, our support staff. And they all shared their original poems. They had written their own poems, and we all sat together and read some of those poems in different languages and shared the creativity. And so it was a beautiful time of sharing that evening. And so today, what we're going to do is, we have chosen, for lack of time, a short story called Marriage is a Private Affair, a topic that everybody is interested in and interests all of us. And our children have read this short story, and we have given out handouts of those short stories to you. So we're going to take you through this experience of Lingua Cafe.
Can I ask
Over
you
to
really
Mr.
quick?
Atkins.
Can I just ask you something really quick?
Yes.
Did you always do this after school hours? Was it always after school?
We had it from 2 to 4.
2 to 4, you
2
said?
to 4, yes.
Okay, and then how did you do your invitation list of who got invited to that? Is
We
it a
would-
class?
We had our parents.
Is it a
So-
class? in particular that did
Yes,
it?
yes, we had our senior students,
So it was the senior
especially
students
those
from
who were
literature
reading
class?
those books.
Okay, so was that your senior regular English literature
Yes,
class?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and before I begin, I think I'm going to just let the team introduce themselves very quickly. Do you want to tell everyone your names?
Yes, so I'm Vitesh William.
I'm Prasad Xavier. I'm Nikita Vivek. I'm Shreya Ghosh.
And I'm Sana Aidur.
And teachers, do you want to quickly?
I'm Shimona Chatterjee.
And I'm Sydney, and we all teach English, and we're very passionate about what you're going to see. Videsh, can I ask you to help me with the PowerPoint? Not yet, yeah? I'll tell you when. So you've heard about what we do. You've heard about the Lingua Cafe, and of course, book clubs as it is are not new. And yet, the Lingua Cafe opens up a different kind of setting to discuss literature and really give you the freedom to talk about literature in a manner of ease and leisure, which a book club setting doesn't generally give you. And I think that's one of the multiple benefits of having the Lingua Cafe, and you'll see from our discussion this afternoon, this morning, how that's generated. But before we begin, just to engage you a little bit, I want to do with you something that I do in a literature class when we introduce Shakespeare for the first time. So we're going to show you a line, and by a show of hands, you're just going to tell me if you think it's Shakespeare or if you think it's a line from hip hop. Okay? Is everybody aware of what hip hop is? I think our students
Can you give us a demonstration?
I think
Can
our
you give us a
students.
demonstration?
You did not let me finish. I think I was going to say, students often forget that we've been their age at some point as well. And so it's a nice way to start when you start Shakespeare for the first time. So let's have the first one. That's your line. And I'm going to ask you, how many think that's Shakespeare? Please raise your hands. High. Really high. 1, 2, 3, 4 people. And how many think that's hip hop? We have lots of fence sitters. You need to choose one side, okay? Hip hop, how many? 1 hip hop, 2 hip hop, 3 hip hop, 4 hip hop. So that's equal actually. We need one more Shakespeare or hip hop. One more hand. Come on, one more hand.
Hip hop.
Hip hop, alright. Shakespeare, you want to show us? That's actually from the Wu-Tang Clan, 90s hip hop band.
So they were influenced by Shakespeare.
Possibly,
So they
possibly.
lifted and copied it.
Yes, so
Possibly.
we're not wrong.
In fact, one of the great things about hip hop is it's got so many elements. One of which is philosophy. And if you look at lyrics from hip hop, not necessarily the Wu-Tang Clan, they can be a little explicit sometimes. It's a lot of information in there. All right, next one. All right, so hip hop,
Hip-hop.
Shakespeare.
Hip hop.
Hip hop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shakespeare, 1, 2, 3. Lots of people not voting here. Okay, so hip hop or Shakespeare, they say hip hop. Let's see. That's Nicki Minaj. And if you have a chat with your students, they'll tell you she's a great singer. Her singing skills are questionable. That's my opinion. So that's clearly Nicki Minaj. All right. That one. Hip hop.
Hip hop.
1, 2, 3, 4. Shakespeare. 1, 2. 2
3,
Shakespeare.
4,
3,
5.
4, 5. Okay. That's Hamlet.
Oh no.
And alright, I think there's one more. Is that it? Alright, thank you. The point I'm making, and this is really something I want to drive home, because the time you have in a literature class is limited, and you've got to get that coursework completed on time so that you're meeting your deadlines and you're getting your work done. But taking it out of the classroom into something like the Lingua Cafe allows you so much opportunity to explore more than just the obvious. And what I was getting to is that if you remove literature from its context, and you'll all agree with me, you cannot make sense of the beauty of the piece of work that you're talking about, and you cannot make sense of the intricacies and the subtleties involved in that particular text. And that's some of the things we considered long and hard when we introduced the Lingua Cafe, about how important it was to look at it in its context, to spend time talking about it in its context, and so through it an appreciation of culture emerges, and you generate discussion that leads to not just an understanding of the text in itself, but larger conceptual issues that affect people. And that's why we really study literature. I think one of the first things we ask the children is, why are we studying this? Why do we need to study something that was written so long ago? And taking it out of the classroom, something like Lingua Cafe, you may find a different name for it if you choose to incorporate this, but it's about giving children the opportunity to really explore a text. What we're doing today is, ideally we would have loved for you to have read the little story that we're going to talk about. It's Chinua Achebe's Marriage is a Private Affair. But KHDA didn't know how many people would be attending. So Shumona is going to give you a 30-second Chinua Achebe 101 and tell you what this story is about. And then we'll open it to a mini discussion of the nature of the Lingua Cafe and then open up to you for questions.
Hi everybody. This is a story written by a Nigerian author, and it's about Nemeka, who is a young man from the Igbo tribe in Nigeria. He lives and works in Lagos, and the capital city of Nigeria. There he falls in love with and plans to marry a girl who is a school teacher and who is from another tribe. Nemeka's father is a deeply religious man with views about, he has very strong views about marriage. So Nemeka hesitates to write to his father about the marriage that he wants to. And then what happens, the father and the son have a huge problem because the father is not agreeing with the son's views. And Nemeka does not listen to his father, gets married to this girl. And after which the father decides not to keep any contact with the son. And for 8 years, they don't meet each other. And after 8 years, Nemeka's wife, writes a letter to Nemeka's father asking for permission to allow her sons to meet the father. And this is the time when the grandfather is in a quandary. He wants to meet the grandsons, but at the same time thinks it's not right because his son has not listened to him. So at this juncture, the story ends. So the story is inconclusive, in the sense that we don't really get to know whether he agrees to it or not. And from then on, the students are going to take over.
All right, thank you, Shmona. As you can see, this story is set in Nigeria, and that could be a little far removed from the children we teach it to if you're not from Nigeria. And so, looking at it from all perspectives and allowing children to tackle it from all sides, look at context, look at ideologies that affect the people of that region, makes the story more real to them. And what we're getting at through it is, how does this affect me? Or how does this affect the way I think about this particular issue? Or where I come from, what are people's opinions on this issue? So I'm going to ask, who's doing background? Nikita is going to talk to us a little bit about the background of the story, the author, and the place it's set.
Okay, so as previously said, the story is set in Nigeria, and it was written in the 1950s. So during this period in time, it was a period during which the Nigerians were fighting for independence from British colonialism, and so there was a lot of, there was a string of patriotism and nationalism in the country, which is where we had all these pieces of African literature come in, which is what explains the origin of this story. And I think an important thing to note here is the fact that the author himself was part of the Igbo tribe, which is how he's able to give so much detail and description throughout the story and give us an insight as to how traditional views and things like that were during that period of time.
If you want to tell us what characterizes this particular tribe, or what are some of the things they hold really close to them?
So as we said earlier, they had a lot of traditional views. So like, say for example, marriage, they had strict views about people from their own tribe marrying among the tribe. And apart from that, there were a lot of other superstitions and beliefs in medicines and witches of the sort. So they had a lot of traditional strong views that they held on to very dearly.
The rest of you, please feel free to answer, yes? So my next question would be, is there something or some angle in particular or some idea in particular that colored their opinions on, say, marriage, or something specific other than just their traditional beliefs? Anything else that colored their decisions about marriage, etc.? Yeah.
So I think their mindset about religion and how everyone had to follow a particular religion. Everything had to happen within religion. Now when we look at marriage, we think about love and relationship between two people. But in that context, in the tribe, it was more about the culture and more like a sort of thing that you had to do as a formality rather than wanting to do because you wanted to be with another person.
So do the characters then represent? Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, what I want to say was, I think that's a generalization because I come from a culture where society plays a huge role in who you marry, and very similar to Nemika's culture and his society, the Iwaibo tribe. So his society and my society, they look at things like wealth, your profession, your religion, and your name, and your family status, things like that. So it's interesting to note that the son, Nemika, he comes from such a background, but he thinks otherwise. He doesn't agree with them. And his thoughts on marriage, like Videsh said, are very different. He thinks that marriage is based on love and stuff like that. So I think that because he was exposed to a modern education and because he had that, and that's why his thoughts changed.
If I may add to what you said, in the 1950s, there were three kinds of marriages happening in Nigeria. One was a traditional marriage, second was a civil marriage, and the third was the religious marriages. In case of religious marriages, there were a lot of problems and issues. That the thing was that even if I follow Christianity, I have my own ways. And I will not accept any other girl from any other tribe, despite the fact that she is also a Christian, because she will not know the norms that we follow. So I think that was one significant problem that actually was created at that point in time. Of course, things have changed now. People understand and comprehend things in a completely different light. Nevertheless, these were three things that kept them back from accepting somebody from the other tribes.
Can I just intersperse this discussion before we forget and the moment passes? I'm looking at Shimona and she's got her notes, but that's something we actively encourage during the Lingua Cafe. Children actually annotate their books and they come in with research done and they come in with their own information because that adds so much value to the discussion that's happening. So one of the things you need to look at is giving children the time to read it. For example, the first book we did, we told the entire school community that they had 1 month to read the book, and that the Lingua Cafe was planned for a month after that announcement. So everybody came having read that book with their own ideas, with their own discussion points that we were able to engage in discussion at the Lingua Cafe. Sorry, Shreya, you were saying something.
I'd also like to bring up the fact that when Nemika told Okeke that he had someone he had in mind to marry, and he also mentioned that he didn't love the woman Okeke had in mind for him to marry. He loved someone else. And then Okeke asked, "Nobody said you did. Why should you?" That lets us know that Okeke didn't believe in love. He didn't believe that love was a necessity in marriage. He had other ideals for marriage, like a good Christian girl and someone who would, go by the rules and things like that. So I just wanted to say.
I'm glad you said so because that leads me really nicely into the next thing. So we're looking at a tribe, we're looking at obviously conflict, man versus man versus an idea, an ideology. That leads me to, sorry, sure, please.
One thing that I read here, and probably it's not touched upon, probably, I'm not sure, the way they looked at women, because she was a teacher and they held the belief that women are supposed to be quiet, silent,
Silent.
should not be doing ever.
Do you want to talk about
Yes, sorry, I'm fine.
In the text, I think the father
Please feel
states,
free to add.
the father says that it's because of his religious beliefs that in the Bible somewhere it says that women should keep silent. But one of the biggest problems as to why society was not able to go then was that it wasn't taken into context, because what he was referring to was that women should keep silent in church, which makes a lot more sense than just saying women should keep silent throughout. And it was things like that that sort of backed their not so logical thinking, saying that because it's religion and people blindly believed in religion, why we saw this at that time was actually a problem.
And I think that's very well reflected in the father and the son equation, because the father represents that generation of people who didn't have that logical, critical thinking mindset, whereas the son, who grows up in this city, has exposure to education and modernness, has a completely different point of view.
So
So you were saying about conflict between ideologies between like the older and the younger generations. So the older generation, at least portrayed in this story, is that they believe that society it plays a huge role in determining, as I said before, who you marry. But the newer generations, they believe that marriage is a private affair, that it's between two people and themselves only, like who, and they get to decide that if they want to marry the other person or not. It's not based on their family and things like that. Yeah.
Sanmay, you want to talk about what your opinion on the book was? Or that story was?
Yeah, sure. Throughout the story, we see a lot of references to Chinua Achebe's culture itself. A lot of references to the beliefs, the traditions that they held. And one of them is what Ma'am touched upon, and it was the theme of gender roles. That is strongly brought about through Okeke's character itself and his perspective of women and what they were meant to do. So that's highlighted as he says that as long as the girl can read the Bible well and fluently, she's an apt wife.
I think he said something so valid. I'm going to stretch that out a little bit. You know, again, I'm looking at a classroom situation where you need to get the story done. But something as important as our understanding of gender roles, or what it is to be a male or a female, or how society perceives those gender roles, is a discussion in itself and can have a completely different take. You can have a completely different take and discussion on that. A classroom scenario may not allow that discussion to unfold to the degree that it could. But taking it out of the classroom, giving children the freedom to discuss something like gender roles is such an important concept right now and so relevant to us. People in Thailand, Thailand officially has now a third gender for all sorts of legal work. And so discussing these things makes not just the discussion engaging, but makes the story more relevant to the children as well. But again, the merit is doing it on the outside, giving them the time and freedom to do so. I'm going to ask you.
Sorry. If I may add, also the very fact that it also brings in the question of power and what people in a superior position can do to the masses. For example, if Okeke believes that women should be silent, that's because he heard it in church, and being uneducated, and he prefers to have the pastor or the preacher interpret the Bible to him. But that's not what it actually means. And so we see that happening in how people in positions can manipulate texts, and the unsuspecting masses just lap it up. And the influence that they have on them and how they brainwash their thinking, and that's what we've seen over the years.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Is it that she belonged to a different tribe?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so if you look at the other side, of the father's side, which I'm not necessarily on his side, but the only reason why tribes maintain from generation to generation after everyone dies is because someone stuck to the rule, which is you have to marry within your tribe. So you keep the royalty where it is, and you keep that intact. And like the Emirati community, they marry within, yes? So how have they been able to maintain this royalty throughout the years is because abiding by that rule of marrying within where they're supposed to marry. So he was actually like a rebel outside of that, not going along with what the tradition was. So the father actually has a really legitimate point. Even though, can't you fall in love with somebody in the tribe? Surely that's possible too. Is your love only reserved for one person, one human being? Can you not fall in love with somebody else within the same circle? And so I just want to bring up this point because the tribes are really important to maintain. So is this love so, is that the soulmate? Is that the person that that guy has to be with for the rest of his life and is ordained that that's your soulmate? And sorry, she's out of the tribe, I'm really sorry about that, but I have to marry this. Is that her destiny? Is that his destiny? Or can something else be worked out with the father? And it seems to me that the father's saying, you can fall in love with lots of people. Can you please fall in love with somebody in the tribe?
Yes. So does love work that way?
So I'm just wondering about this.
Ma'am, when you read the text, you see that nowhere does he explicitly say that you cannot marry someone from outside your tribe. That's an
Isn't that a
influence.
rule? Is the
All he
father's
says
rule
is that
only?
he keeps going on about religion, And if what you say is right, and because of religion, then that goes on to justify so many more things in the Bible, which makes absolutely no sense logically.
But the
So-
tribe thing, go back to the tribe thing.
Yeah, so
Don't you think
there
it
has to
really
be-
comes back to the tribe?
There has
bottom
to be
line?
one way that you actually go forward. Now, while what you say is right, the fact remains that he sent his son to the city, so there's not so much of that you need to remain in
Oh,
the
I
tribe.
see. So
And
he
just-
did give him a chance to go out and explore since his own fault.
And just looking at that angle, I think what,
Yeah.
sorry, just
I
one
just
second.
wanted to say, this is a universal question that comes up with each and every generation.
Yes.
Whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in this part of the world.
True.
Any generation that comes up is going to have some kind of resistance to the older generation. In that sense, we're allowed to. So our fathers did it, your kids are going to do it, and our kids' kids are going to do the same thing. So if it's not religion, it's norms. If it's not norms, it's traditions. If it's not traditions, something is going to come up at a certain time when we're young, and we want to tell everybody we are able to make the decisions that we want to do with our lives. But fact of the matter is, we learn it when we get a bit older, and the older you get, the more you know. Is that family and traditions are there for a reason. And if you isolate yourself totally from your family and traditions and your societies, it's not that easy when you're a bit older. So I think the whole issue about this short story as well, it's cross-cultural, cross-traditional. You'll have it in all religions, Christianity, Islam, in any tradition you'd have it, in any country you'd have it. And the marriage of the generations coming together with globalization anyway as well. It's not about marrying outside your tribe. It's I'm coming with someone from, I don't know what country that my parents never heard of.
So love is the bottom line, so Romeo and Juliet have it all right. Except without the suicides and,
Yeah.
right.
I think, ma'am, you stole the next 3 questions I have. So don't worry.
So love wins, right?
Um,
Romeo and Juliet,
Yeah.
love wins.
It's interesting that there's an inconclusive ending to this story, and that allows the audience to really ruminate on how did this play out, how did this pan out, what could have possibly happened.
The
You wanna
father's
talk
gonna
about
meet the
maybe
boys.
what you
So about
thought?
what ma'am just said,
Okay.
a similar situation right now exists in India, and Chetan Bhagat wrote a book, Two States, which sort of tackles pretty much the same situation in the more modern world. And towards the end, he tries to explain as to why the elders don't really want children to choose who they marry. And one of the things he said was that till a certain point, your parents choose everything for you. And then one of the biggest decisions in your life, and you tell your parents that, you know what, you're wrong, I'm right, that's also something that plays in when making a decision like arranging a marriage. And in this social context, that makes a lot of sense as to why his father would be against love marriage without consulting him, without even telling him, I think for 6 months after he finding him a bride already. So that also
But
plays
think
in
about
a
it,
lot.
you're growing in a city like Dubai. Global. Right? And you might meet anyone today.
Yes.
Right? And anyone could be someone that you're of interest, that find your interests and where you might fall in love with her. If you would be living in your own country, it might be not as problematic as it is today. So I think this globalization of the world is going to get us into a lot of similar debates.
But it also can bring peace, because
course, yeah.
then everyone's trying to work together, because it's not me against you.
Sometimes it's not about religion, it's not about culture, it's about exercising power and authority over your children. You want them to do things your way, and definitely you don't want anything else. There's one more thing that's very
But I
interesting.
don't think children today accept that very easily. And I don't think parents, at least this generation of
Yes.
parents, are
No, we empower them.
so hard.
We
on their
empower
kids.
them, right.
But also, I think that love
Yeah,
plays
things
a
have
key
changed.
role.
Yes, that's true.
I think that love plays a major role, all
Yeah.
about everything, that love always ends up winning.
And interestingly,
Out of
the story
everything.
doesn't just have
It's the most
romantic
powerful
love.
thing.
Yes.
Interestingly, the story doesn't just have romantic love playing out, but you'll see towards the end of the story that the father begins to soften, and it's about his own
Of course,
relationship
forgiveness
with
and
his
love.
son,
Yes, yes.
and that dynamic as well is quite visible through the text. Do you want to say anything to wrap up, and then we'll open it up to questions? Any closing comments? How is this relevant to you? We've already talked about countries where it is so relevant, but any closing comments? No one?
So the emotions, something that we haven't gone into fully. We see that since his childhood he's been respecting his father, and then he falls in love. So we see that one emotion sort of overpowers the other, or sort of says like, yeah, wins over the other. And then we also see that how his father eventually forgives him because of the love for his grandchildren, not necessarily for him. So we see how love eventually does overpower all other logic and respect even to a certain extent, and that's something that we all can take away from here.
Thank you. That was a simulation of how it pans out in a Lingua Cafe. Of course, the time is a longer time slot. It's about 2 hours with breaks in between. We have, for example, if we were doing this particular story, we probably have the setup to reflect the Nigerian tribes. You probably have people in costume serving snacks and finger food that reflected the community. So we do all of that to add to the
probably
atmosphere.
an activate. Even the movie version sometimes, just a scene out of it we would play and then discuss.
It's a really
That's
great
Lingua
idea,
Cafe.
I really love it. It's really
Yeah, very
awesome.
nice.
And we are open to any questions that you might have.
How many people do attend this, including parents and children, and how many children participate in the discussion? And how do you make sure that most of the students are participating, contributing to the discussion?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah. So in our school, we have the language, we have 2 English classes. We have the language and literature, and we have the literature class. So normally it's just, it's the 2 classes, plus the rest of the school, like teachers and parents, people who are interested, and other students who really want to talk about the book. If you're asking for a number, there are usually around
It depends.
50 to 60.
I just want to find out that there are certain children who dominate the scene always. They're always the ones who contribute to the
Good question.
discussion. So how do you make sure that everybody?
We always have one person, generally a teacher, moderating the entire discussion. Just so that everybody has equal say, is given equal chance to be heard. I think to answer your previous question also, what works really well is people who attend are there because A, they've read the book, they've understood it, and they want to discuss it. We've not had a single case where somebody has shown up without having read the book, or wanted to show up without having read the book, because when you see the kind of discussion generated, anybody who has not read the book will feel out of place and will not be able to contribute, unless of course they're actively engaged in, like today, taking away from it. And so we find that those who do attend have generally done some preparation, have read the book, which is why we give them the time as well.
And plus with students, parents and teachers, there's a good balance when the discussion is on.
You need a skillful moderator because you don't know how the discussion will go.
And not let anybody hijack the whole.
Yeah. You don't know what's going to surface.
Sorry, you spoke about that you read a book in English as well as in Arabic,
Yes.
translated
Yeah.
probably by Najib Mahfouz.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Thief
what I
in the
thought.
Dark.
Okay, that's what I thought. So how did you?
We didn't read it in both languages. We
Okay.
had people there who had read it in the Arabic version.
All right.
And what we did was, because it's a text in translation, we looked at how much of meaning was lost or created in the translation of that text.
I thought it was a cross-curricular link between the 2 departments. I thought, oh, that's great.
We did have the entire Arabic.
We did
at the same
because
time.
There wasn't a cross-curricular
Arabic
back.
is from
okay.
Egypt. He's from Egypt and he had read the book in Arabic. And
Okay.
it was important for us to, especially like if you look at stream of consciousness, in the English version, it's very easy for us to identify which parts of the stream of consciousness. But that's not the way it is in Arabic. In the Arabic, how the book is written in Arabic. So for them, it was very difficult for them to understand it that way. And Mahfouz was the first person who introduced stream of consciousness in Arabic writing.
I think what's important is to have a rationale for doing it. You don't do it for the purpose of doing it. You need to do something because you want to achieve some sort of target. With this first book, the target was looking at a text in translation and how meaning is created in the 2 languages, because it was an IB syllabus, it was part of the IB syllabus, and they were looking at how techniques in literature contribute to creation of meaning within the text itself. And so when you have a focused discussion, for example, we look specifically at the stream of consciousness, then your discussion veers in that direction. So if you know, thank you, if you know why you're doing it and what you want to achieve by it, because through that discussion, we wanted the children to take away techniques, we wanted the children to take away translation, we wanted children to take away difference in meanings in the two languages.
And who chooses the novels or the
Yes, I was about to ask the same
selections?
The IB gives us a list of books, of course,
Okay, so
but we
it's-
choose it for ourselves.
Okay, so it's
It was interesting because the minute we had it for the IB children, our ICSE children started saying, why not for us as well? And so the next one and the third one, of course, was for poetry, and we opened it up to the whole school, and we've seen the crowds growing. People are more interested, they're coming out of their comfort zone. A lot of times children don't want to answer questions in class or bring up an issue in the classroom setting, but allowing this sort of freedom gives them the chance to really express themselves.
It need not be a textbook from the syllabus. You could
Yeah.
choose any book and open it to your parents as well. So everybody reads and comes and shares.
But I'm sure it works with all the students, right?
Yes, we haven't tried it. So yeah.
But in fact, the primary, they want to have one. So most probably we'll have one for primary at their level. And there are primary parents also who want to be part of the Lingua Cafe along with their children.
Maybe we could try.
So yes, we're planning one for the primary.
Do you have it once a month or twice, bi-monthly, or how do you plan?
We have, so far we've had 2 in a term.
I think, again, it's need-based. And the beauty of this is do it because you need to do it, not because you just want to do it. We chose it because the book needed that kind of discussion, and that kind of focus. The third time around was for fun, really.
Yes.
We just wanted teachers, parents, students to try poetry and to share poetry because we knew that they were writing. And the third time around, that was our focus, to get people interested in literature, to get people to write. So really, if you look at the need and you look at the why you do it, it makes everything else more easy.
Like for example, when you did, also we did Albert Camus' originally written in French, we had people in the audience who had read the book in Arabic, who had read the book in Spanish, who had read the book even in Malayalam, okay, which is a regional vernacular language. And so each one's interpretation of it was amazing.
Wow.
And of course we created the whole ambiance of the cheese and the wine.
Alright, so that wraps up Lingua Cafe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.